Warring parties failed to operate first commercial flight to Sana'a airport in a blow to already fragile truce. Yemeni government seeks international pressure to make Houthis respect the agreed truce. The United Nations warns that absence of peace and long-term ceasefire poses additional challenges for Yemenis. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Shazza Abdelbay. The Presidential Leadership Council held a meeting on Sunday headed by Rashad Al-Alimi to discuss the Houthi militia block of the first flight from Sana'a International Airport. The PLC held the rebels responsible for aggravating the suffering of Yemenis by fabricating justifications aimed at evading the truce and thwarting the peace process. The Presidential Leadership Council renewed its eagerness to do everything that would alleviate the human suffering of Yemenis. The Yemeni government blamed the Houthi militia for causing the cancellation of the first flight from Sana'a airport. In its statement, the government expressed its regret that the Houthi militia closed all ticket outlets and provided tickets with passports issued by the militia. The government repeated that it had announced since March 2017 that any travel documents issued by the Houthi rebels are invalid. For his part, the UN envoy to Yemen, Hans Grunberg, expressed his concern over the cancellation of the first commercial flight from Sana'a airport, which was scheduled for today. Grunberg urged the parties to work constructively with him and his office to find a solution that allows the flights to resume as planned. The Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz congratulated Rashad Al-Alimi, head of Presidential Leadership Council, on assuming office. King Salman wished success for the PLC head and the members of the council in their mission to reach security and stability for Yemen. The Yemeni government called upon the international community to pressure Houthi militia and make it abide by the UN-brokered truce. This report has more details.
Chairman of the new Yemeni Presidential Leadership Council, Rashad Al-Alimi, underlined the importance of international pressure to make the Iran-backed Houthi militia commit to the two-month truce. Head of the PLC received a call from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who congratulated him on his new position. Blinken reaffirmed U.S. support for the ongoing truce and the opportunity to provide relief to Yemenis by easing the movement of people and goods, including fuel. He further stressed the importance of opening roads to Taiz and other areas. Alimi, for his part, hailed U.S. support to the legitimate Yemeni government since 2014 and its backing of PLC. He stressed that the government is committed to the humanitarian truce in spite of the ongoing Houthi violations. He hoped the international community would pressure the Houthis so that they would commit to the truce and open crossings leading to Taiz in order to lift the siege on the city, in line with the United Nations ceasefire. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Ma'in Abdul Malik pledged that the Yemeni government will implement the recommendations of the parliament and follow the political goals set by Alimi. He added that the PLC and parliament's confidence in the government will motivate it to adjust to the changes brought about by the formation of the council. On the ground, the Houthis have continued to violate the truce. The army has confirmed over 2,000 Houthi violations since the truce was announced on April 2. Several Houthi infiltrations were thwarted, and the militias have continued to fire at military positions, fly drones, amass forces, and build fortifications at several fronts.
The joint forces recorded 17 Houthi violations of the truce during the past 24 hours on the western coast of Yemen. The Houthis included 12 violations in the southern fronts of Hodeidah and 5 violations in Taiz. Houthis attempted to infiltrate and target residential villages and military sites with artillery, and they tried to set up fortifications. Military sources in Al-Dala said that the Houthi militia targeted separate sectors in the governorate with various weapons. The sources indicated that the Houthi militia used medium and heavy weapons, including drones. This report has more details.
The Houthi militia continues to commit many violations on various fronts of Al-Dala, south of Yemen. A spokesman for Al-Dala front confirmed that the Houthi militia committed 337 violations on various fronts of the governorate. He said the rebels targeted the sites of the joint forces as well as the populated areas. He added that the joint forces stations in various sectors of Al-Dala are still committed to implementing the ceasefire in accordance with United Nations resolutions.
Houthi militia continues their violations for the UN brokered truce. There are 337 recorded violations up till now through using different types of medium and heavy weapons. These violations were concentrated on Murais, Balak and Fakhr fronts. The militia is still violating the truce through targeting residential areas.
The heroes of the Joint Forces and Adala Combat Front also confirmed their keenness to abide by the truce, despite the continuous and daily violations of the Houthi militia.
We are in a truce, and these villages have witnessed Houthi violations by mortar and sniper shots.
The Joint Forces say these violations reflect the intentions of the Houthi rebels and that the Joint Forces will be always in high readiness. They affirmed that the Joint Forces and the popular resistance are committed to peace as much as they are committed to war.
A recent UN report confirmed that humanitarian agencies face nearly 3,000 cases of restrictions by the Houthi militia. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said denial of aid access to people during 2021 left 10.9 million people deprived of food. OCHA has warned that absence of peace in Yemen will pose additional challenges this year at all levels. British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss expressed delight that Luke Simons, who was unlawfully detained without charge or trial since 2017 in Yemen by the Houthis, has been released. She added that Simons will shortly come together with his family. Truss paid tribute to Omani and Saudi partners for securing his release. The UN Refugee Agency in Yemen said conflict remains the main drive of displacement in Yemen. It added that out of 4.3 million IDPs, there is over 1.5 million who live in nearly 2,350 hosting sites across the country. Displacement camps in Yemen have witnessed rising numbers and increasing humanitarian needs with no existing resources. This report has more details.
The war brought many worries, suffering and tragedies that cast a shadow over all the people of Yemen. The suffering would be greater with the lives of Yemenis who were displaced by the war from their areas, to live a harsh life whose suffering does not end, no matter how many days or years passed. Yesterday, Yemeni authorities announced that more than 116,000 civilians were displaced in Yemen's central province of Ma'rib in 2021. The figure was provided by the government-affiliated Executive Unit for IDPs Camps Management, who said that over 2.2 million Yemenis have been displaced in Ma'rib province overall since 2014, after it was home to 3 million people before the conflict. The scene in Ma'rib is a gloomy snapshot of how millions of Yemenis are suffering as a result of the 7-year-long conflict. About 154 million informal sites, both large and small, host thousands of families who have sought safety in Ma'rib from across the country. An even larger number of displaced people are staying with locals in the area. As the conflict spread, Yemenis from across the country migrated to Ma'rib, that is previously considered as the safest place in the country. Development of infrastructure and increased economic opportunities over recent years had also made Ma'rib an attractive location. Today, however, with the escalation of the conflict, the situation in Ma'rib has changed. Violence in Ma'rib is intensifying as warring parties fight to claim control over an area that is important for its geographic location, oil and gas resources, and military weight. Violence in Ma'rib is intensifying as warring parties fight to claim control over an area that is important for its geographic location, oil, gas resources, and military weight. A city that has previously hosted 500,000 people, according to local authorities, is now home to nearly 3 million people. Most of the displaced people are totally dependent on humanitarian assistance, although it does not always reach them. The war in Yemen has killed tens of thousands and caused what the United Nations describes as the world's largest humanitarian crisis. The UN have warned that nearly 80% of the country, about 30 million people, are in need of humanitarian assistance and more than 30 million are at risk of starvation. Millions of displaced Yemenis are living in unimaginable conditions, looking forward to a life with more safety and stability, so that they may heal their wounds and tragedies that the war of the Houthi militia gave them.
Meet Idris is a mobile classroom that roams the deserts in Yemen to reach millions of displaced children whose lives have been shattered by the war. This report has more details.
Under the shade of the awnings, a big yellow school bus roams Yemen's refugee camps to reach some of the 2 million Yemeni children missing school due to the civil war. The Idris bus, funded by Kuwait's Rahma International Association in collaboration with local authorities, is an attempt to get children back into class. Mafraq camp was the first to be visited because it hosts the most displaced families and has a large number of children out of school. When Idris' school bus pulled up on the skirts of the desert camp, displaced children couldn't have been more excited, as they hadn't been to school for a long time, since their families left their homes in northern Yemen to escape the hell of the war. 94 children received intensive lessons in Arabic, Islamic studies, mathematics, and science to help them catch up with the learning they have missed since they were displaced. For 3 months, the bus roams from 8 a.m. to noon every day, except Fridays, and children aged between 6 to 10 years old sit on colorful chairs outside in the shade of the bus to get prepared for their lessons. By the end of each week, assessments are held to check students' progress throughout the learning process. And after 3 months, pupils are subject to exams. And if they pass, they receive certificates, which means that they will have an official document to present to schools when they eventually go back. According to UNICEF, 2 million Yemeni children are out of school because of the conflict. More than 460 schools have been attacked across the country, and more than 2,500 schools have been damaged or are being used by the Houthi militia for non-educational purposes. Yemeni government officials and local human rights activists have further accused the Houthis of brainwashing and training primary school students for war, as Houthis didn't only make changes to the educational curriculum, but also they were turning schools into military training camps. Idris bus is considered an attempt to revive the learning process among those kids who pay the heaviest price due to the ongoing conflict that has devastated their lives.
Coming next, Yemeni people continue to struggle with rising prices during the holy month of Ramadan.
It's been 7 years of brutal conflict. It led to one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Civilians are paying the highest price. One civilian has been killed or injured every hour in Yemen during January of this year. The conflict decimated the country's infrastructure, triggered widespread economic collapse, and pushed Yemenis into further poverty and to the brink. More than 4 million people were displaced. They have lost their homes, loved ones, and their livelihoods. These displaced families are 4 times more at risk of starvation. They live in flimsy shelters, far away from sources of water, with no electricity, schools, or hospitals. A vicious cycle has taken hold of Yemen. 30 million people live in Yemen. 2/3 of them are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. This conflict must end. Yemen and its people can't afford to wait.
Welcome back. As watermelon is a popular vegetable for Yemenis during Ramadan, farmers in Mecca City started to grow a lot of it to make financial gains. This report has more details.
As if it was a race against time, the cultivation of these large areas with crops, which are popular during the month of Ramadan, prompts the farmers of Mecca district to replace the agricultural varieties with these delicious fruits. Due to the great demand for watermelons during Ramadan and its financial returns, the farmers of Mecca tend to grow and market this delicious fruit in a hope for collecting revenues during the month of fasting. Watermelon cultivation is considered a profitable project and a good source of income if it is planted wisely and on an expandable basis. Most of watermelon growers start the process by planting seed hybrids, in a protected and internally controlled environment. The seeds are planted in the month of Rajab, and this period allows enough time for the watermelon fruits to ripen, so that the harvest season falls on the first day of the fasting month. New technologies were introduced for the first time in these farms that were dependent on flood irrigation system to turn to modern distillation systems that helps in cost reduction by an estimated percentage of 90%.
We apply the new technology in planting watermelons because it reduces the usage of diesel engine and water, and it saves time and money too.
Here in the public street, vendors stand to place their products that fasting people are willing to buy, especially since the demand for watermelons increases during the holy month, not only on the western coast but also in other Yemeni cities. The farmers in Nakha district are keen to plant watermelons 2 months before Ramadan to coincide with the harvest season with the advent of the fasting month, so that the farmers achieve a margin of profit.
Yemeni people continue to struggle with the high prices of food supplies, even as Ramadan is about to end. This report has more details.
The atmosphere of Ramadan in the district of Aden may lack the spirituality of this holy month due to the insane rise of various food supplies that causes the citizens' inability to buy the simplest things that decorate the Ramadan table. In light of this rise, the Yemeni citizen finds it difficult to buy simple food supplies such as sambusa and bagya.
Prices are unbelievable. It's much more than the last year and all the previous years. This year, there are no salaries. Everything is very expensive and the exchange rate keeps increasing every day. You can't buy anything and the situation continues to deteriorate. Al-Bagya, sambusa and all the food supplies are very expensive. Prices are increasing very much and that is affecting Yemeni citizens directly as they are unable to buy their needs during Ramadan. Authorities should find a solution.
The citizens are used to going to the popular markets in this holy month in order to decorate their table with some traditional snacks such as sambusa and bagya. But the price of the grain has reached 100 riyals. In Aden, the sambusa is known as one of the most important and distinguished dishes, and you can hardly find a table without it during this holy month.
The goods were sold at reasonable prices. Citizens were able to buy at low prices. Now, prices are expensive. You can't buy anything. Sambusa, bagya and everything else is very expensive, even vegetables. 1 kilo of potato is for 1,000 riyals. Before, it was sold for 400 or 300 riyals. If I want to buy 5 grains of sambusa, it's going to cost me 500 riyals. That's a crime. I work here in a Saida pastry. Before, we used to buy large amounts of goods such as sambusa and bagya. As everyone was buying our products, we were selling 1 grain of bagya for 20 riyals and the sambusa for 50 riyals. Now, after the increase in prices, we sell it for 100 riyals. People can't afford that.
In light of this rise in the inability of citizens to buy Ramadan needs, how long will the citizen continue to suffer from food insecurity and insanely high prices?
The Yemeni government condemned the kidnapping of journalist Nadia Muqbil by the Houthi militia. Information Minister Muammar al-Iryani said the militia is tracking its targeting of the press and the policy of repression. The militia kidnapped the journalist in the capital Sana'a while she was preparing a field report on the rise of food prices during Ramadan. The United Nations Development Programme conducted a training course in environment-friendly solutions. The course was attended by 400 Yemenis in Sayoun, the capital of Hadramaut, on the use and maintenance of solar-powered tricycles to help them invest in clean energy solutions and generate incomes. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Warring parties failed to operate first commercial flight to Sana'a airport in a blow to already fragile truce. Yemeni government seeks international pressure to make Houthis respect the agreed truce. The UN warns that absence of peace and long-term ceasefire poses additional challenges for Yemenis. This is the end of the news. Thank you for watching.